Sharing for a second and say welcome. And I'll just switch on the captions. Maybe make my head slightly smaller. That looks strange. Right, that's better. Right, so welcome everyone to our weekly call. Hope you had a fabulous weekend. Right, I'll just switch back to screen sharing now. I'm experimenting with the layout so you can tell me either not end of the call if this works. In terms of agenda this week, as you may have seen from the reminder email, we were planning this week to talk about NIS2. Michael got in touch with me to let me know he's had to do some mandatory poll monitoring training, which I presume means he's going to do some poll monitoring in, I think, Florida, if I remember rightly, which I'm sure will be exciting for the forthcoming presidential elections, which from his email, the poll monitoring starts as soon as the early voting starts, which in some states seems surprisingly early. So within the next week or so, I think, from what he said. So I'm hoping that we will do that next week when he's out from his mandatory training. I'm just waiting for him to confirm by email. You would have seen on my email that I did say we might, very much emphasis on the might, talk about the trust checker from the DNS Research Federation, but that depended on me and the DNS Research Federation team finding someone at very short notice, because some of them are out at an event. So I don't see anyone on the call from the team unless I'm mistaken. So at the moment, it doesn't look like we're going to do that. But if one of the team joins partway through the call, we will pivot to talk about Trust Checker at that point. And I can see in the chat, Ross has helpfully told me that some states the early voting started weeks ago in September. So goodness, no excuses for not voting, I guess, is the message. If you're based in the US and are a US citizen, so legally allowed to vote. As I think one former president may have said, vote early, vote often, but possibly not. Okay, so look, we'll talk about some of the news developments, few forthcoming events, etc. And as I say, if one of the DNS Research Federation team joins, we'll then sort of pick up on the trust checker discussion at that point. But don't hold your breath, as they're not on now. I suspect that's less likely. Which means if you've got other stuff you want to talk about, that there should be plenty of time. So do bear that in mind if there are other things that you want to raise on the call this week. Okay, so let's go right into some of the stuff from the news headlines that you would have, if you're signed up to the mailing list for that, you would have seen already at some point today. And as always, I'm not going to sort of call out all of these. I'll sort of pick up a few of them. But if there's other stuff that caught your eye, feel free to shout out accordingly. So firstly, on the back of Cloudflare's announcement from a couple of weeks back that they were enabling encrypted client hello on their free tiers. So just as a recap, they announced that they were enabling ECH on the free tiers, I think also on the paid for tiers, but with the ability, if you're on a paid for tier, to disable the service. I'm trying to clarify whether that's going to be the case also for the free tiers, but it might be permanently enabled. But anyway, to the so item one on this slide, David Wright, one of the co-authors of our ECH deployment considerations internet draft, has put together a briefing for schools to talk about the potential impact of encrypted client hello on school filtering systems. The sort of TLDR is it all depends what type of filtering you have, whether it has impact or not, as well as other variables in the school environment. So worth a look, and clearly many of the points will carry across the enterprise environment, but the audience that David had in mind specifically for that article was schools. I just pause for a moment because I spied Georgie joined the call from the DNS Research Federation team. Let me just ask Georgia, were you joining because you're interested, or did you get a message from Lucian to maybe what would think about talking about Trust Checker, just to set my expectations?
I'm afraid I wasn't joining because of Trust Checker. I wasn't aware about that there was yes, but I am interested. So if I can be of any assistance, I will.
That's okay. I just feel, to clarify also for everyone else that just joined the call, because Michael wasn't able to do this too this week at short notice, I did reach out to Lucian to see if he wanted to sort of pick up the threads on Trust Checker, which we were going to cover a few weeks back, but weren't able to. And he indicated he was travelling today, but would see if any of the team might be able to, but it was very heavily caveated. It was long odds, so not to worry. We will, by the sound of it, not do Trust Checker then this week. I'll find an alternate date for that. Right, let's go back to the news headlines then. So that was the thing on ECH. If you have an interest in encrypted client, you may want to take a look at the comments from David, even if the school aspect isn't of immediate interest, because as I say, some of the aspects carry across to the enterprise environment.
All right. Say, Andrew. Sorry, this is Darren Pettis. Hi. Say just a quick question on the ECH. Will there be a presentation on the enterprise impact of that, similar to the school one? That'd be of interest.
We will probably. I mean, we've talked about that on this call in the past when it was more theoretical. Obviously, now it's becoming closer to reality. Yes, I think that's something we probably will revisit. My understanding is ECH won't become a standard probably until early next year, given the vagaries of the standards process. So Cloudflare are slightly ahead of the game, as indeed are sort of Google and Mozilla in supporting ECH within their respective browsers, but obviously now it's becoming closer to reality. It makes more sense to talk about it sort of more definitively. So yeah, I think we will revisit that probably towards the end of the year, when we've got more certainty on the likely date when the standard is going to be ratified, and also because I know a few people are doing tests with different systems to see what does and doesn't work well, so have a bit more sort of certainty.
Right. No, I understand the timing. Yeah, and Arnaud did speak to me a little bit about it a number of months ago, but if you have any kind of a synopsis of what it is, what it does, and the impact. I know I'm behind the game. You guys are already down that road. But I've changed roles a few times and different things going on. I apologize for not being up to speed on it, but I think something like that would be extremely helpful as we take it back to our security organizations and help them understand the impact of it.
Yeah, I'll dig something out and drop you a line. I'll probably put it in the notes with the call, Darren. In that case, just that's a good point, because it's been a few months since we've touched on the topic.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll signpost where there's a bit more information for anyone else that'll be of interest to as well. So yeah, good question. Okay, and just so, since I was talking about Cloudflare, you'll see also they put together a post, and there's also some separate news coverage about what was believed to be the largest ever DDoS attack from last month with 3.8 terabits per second of data, which feels like quite a lot. Which I think I can't remember the exact detail. I think that ran for around a minute or so. So that's quite a lot of data that was hitting the system over a reasonably extended time period. Yeah, a lot of stuff around there. So I'm not going to go through all of these. It take far too long and probably be quite dull. But so I'll skip over some of the rest of these. But if any of the others catch your eye, feel free to sort of call out as we go through. So next one I mentioned though, Netscout. I did a piece also on the rise of DDoS attacks, and just sort of highlighted that sort of banking and financial services, government and utilities seem to be particular targets for the attacks as the volume of activity has risen over the last few months. So not just the scale of attacks in the case of Cloudflare, but also the volume overall is continuing to rise. I suspect a bit like sort of prices with inflation, they may really go backwards in terms of volumes, sadly. It's just the nature of the environment, unfortunately. Yeah, there's also, I thought, an interesting piece from Craig Sanderson at Infoblox, looking at the sort of crossover between protective DNS detection and response, and also zero trust DNS, just sort of sharing his thoughts on the sort of linkages between those and how they could potentially be quite complementary developments in different ways. So yeah, quite a nice piece, I thought, from Craig. And then over the page, just a few things coming up just to highlight. So for those of you with more of a policy interest, tomorrow, in fact, ICANN is hosting a half-day conference on internet governance, titled WSIS Plus 20 in the Future of Internet Governance. Fairly timely, with various other things happening this quarter on the governance front, so culminating with the internet. Oh, it's been cancelled, has it, Georgia? I see in the chat. Has that been cancelled? Yes. Okay. Having registered for that over the weekend, fast-moving events, that is unfortunate. Well, in that case, ignore that. Don't register for that. That would be a disappointment. But think instead about either the DNS for EU stakeholder group conference, an hour and a half on the afternoon of the 15th of October, or indeed also IETF 121, first week of November in Dublin. The preliminary agenda is now available, although subject to change. Those of you who are experienced with the IETF know that can vary quite wildly before the final version is published, but it'll give you at least a sense of what might be covered, if not the exact timing. At this stage, Georgia, were you also raising your hand? And if so, please unmute if you were intending to do that.
Yes, just on the WSIS event tomorrow. Sadly, it has been cancelled, but I believe, if my sources are correct, they will be trying it again in November, sort of, I think after the UK IGF and after ICANN. So far, that's what I've heard. So if anyone's interested, that's when it should be.
Might squeeze it in between those things and the IGF in December then, just. Excellent. Okay, well, thanks for highlighting that. That saved me joining tomorrow and listening to silence for a while. So useful to know that's happening. Thank you. Okay, so there's various things coming up, or not, not yet anyway, as it turns out. So you're aware of those, hot off the press. Few other things more generally in the news. You see the European Commission continues to reach out to various of the very large service providers to get data under the Digital Services Act. I think that will continue for some time, and various other bits and pieces. Maybe another one, piece from the World Health Organization. You should control smartphones like tobacco, according to one of the World Health Organization experts. I'm not sure that means you should set fire to them, but who knows? Maybe that will come in time as well. Yeah, a few other bits and pieces, including a couple of bits from the NSA and others looking at the principles of operational technology, cybersecurity, etc. So plenty of stuff in the news this week, if you've not already caught up on it. More generally on dates, a few things. Where are we this week? In fact, deadline next gen attendance at ICANN, the ICANN 82 meeting. So if this is all about sort of getting sort of younger participants, I think, to engage in ICANN. So they're encouraging applications. You got till the 11th to apply for that. So those of us millennials may wish to take advantage of some subsidy, perhaps from ICANN. So apply for that before it's too late. Yeah, a few other bits and pieces. A call for applications for the Cyber Resilience Act expert group, etc. So you can see all those. A few things coming up over the next week or so. Probably highlight towards the bottom. If you want to do a lightning talk at RIPE 89 at the end of this month, you've got till the 18th to put in proposals for that. And also in a couple of weeks' time from today is the cut-off for any drafts you want to put onto the data tracker prior to the ITF 121 meeting, but also on the 21st. That's the cut-off for early registrations. So if you haven't registered and paid by, as it says on the screen, 23:59 UTC on the 21st of October, then you'll pay the standard rate, which I think if you're going in person for the week jumps up by $100 or so. I think it's about $50 for online attendance. So do bear that in mind. If you've not yet registered and paid and are planning to go, you can save a small amount of money if you do so in the next 2 weeks. But also if you've got any drafts you want to be available during the meeting, again, you've got till the 21st to get those on the system. Then there's some other stuff with slightly longer dates. Call for lightning talk proposals for the OAuth 43 meeting. You've got till nearly the end of the month. And that you can even put in proposals for the OAuth 44 meeting in Atlanta, which is next February. You've got till the 2nd of December for that. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Right, so I think that's pretty much everything on sort of deadlines that are coming up at the moment. Finally, in terms of forthcoming events, we've got a Morgue in Toronto this week. So if you're not in Canada but we're thinking of attending, you need to get your skates on as it starts. Well, it's probably just about started actually near lunchtime today in Toronto. I'll change the WSIS Stakeholder Forum online event. It won't be tomorrow. I'll find out when that is. From what Georgia said, maybe sometime in November. So I'll update that when that's clearer. We got the WTSA meeting in New Delhi later this month as well, and so on. So there's plenty of things happening through October and November, as is always the case. So plenty to do. And of course, it's not that long to the IGF meeting in Riyadh in December now. So chance for some winter sun and interesting discussions pre-Christmas, if policy is your thing. Which segues into, so subject to Michael's confirmation, we should be doing the NIS2 discussion next week rather than this week for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I want to try and do it sort of by next week because that more or less coincides with it should be entered into force in national legislation, I think, middle of next week. So it seems appropriate to do it then, albeit I think a lot of member states are somewhat behind the curve on producing their local legislation, but that was the original target date. And then we'll do a review of OARC 43 and RIPE 89 the following week, and the IETF meeting the week after. As you can see, we won't have a call beginning of November, but if you're in Dublin for the ITF meeting, let's meet up in person on Monday the 4th. Again, I won't go through all of the things on the screen, and then in December, you'll see mid-December, again on the 16th, I won't do a call, but if you're in Riyadh for the IGF meeting, again, let's meet up in person on the 16th in lieu of a call that day. I think that's probably it from me. Yes, it is. I should have said at the start, so forgive me. Thank you to DNS OARC for sponsoring the calls, which is much appreciated. But let me pause there and also perhaps more usefully stop sharing my screen so you're not looking at slides, and see if there's any of that has prompted any comments from anyone, or indeed if there's other stuff that you think it'd be useful to talk about this week that you've picked up on or want to highlight that your various employers are doing, etc. So anything from anyone else, and if there is, raise your hand as Georgia did, or just unmute and talk if no one else is, or put something in the chat and I'll gladly read it out. So anything on anyone's minds this week? Give me a moment or two, although I can't see anyone typing at the moment. It doesn't look like it. Well, in which case, interrupt me if you have any last thoughts. But if not, I'll put some information combined with a link to the recording about ECH, just by way of background, and we'll find some time to schedule an ECH specific call, probably towards the end of the year, as I mentioned in response to Darren. And if anyone's got any other points, anything else you want to discuss on the calls, feel free just to drop me a line. I'll be happy to add those to the list. But other than that, thanks everyone for joining this week. And by the way, if anyone isn't on the mailing list for the headlines and wants to be, again, just drop me an email and I'll gladly add you to that mailing list as well. But other than that, have a fantastic week, and look forward to speaking to you next week, probably to talk about NIS2 with Michael, but I'll confirm that at some point this week via email, so you're all aware. But have a great week, everyone, and catch you same time next week. Bye all.